All right, we're going to discuss today a little problem called freedom of speech, and Brother Theo was addressing this issue in a very articulate manner, of course, and we're going to bring this before the public because we have a real problem. Ted, please continue with what we were talking about before we turned on the recorder.
Okay, well, already the question of social media taking it upon themselves to create the type of material that we can work with as writers. And this is a conversation that's being held between two writers, but it really impacts everybody. It impacts the listeners as much as it impacts the writers. But I'm going to talk about it from the standpoint of being a writer, and that is that there are two very separate issues at work. Two different principles at work. One of them is how much space should Facebook or the government or anybody have in terms of limiting a writer's material to work with. How much reach are we going to give anybody into the toolbox of a writer to decide what can and cannot be in that box? May you or may you not have profanity? May you or may you not use hate speech? And a lot of people don't like profanity, and a lot of people don't like hate speech. And generally speaking, the amount of profanity or hate speech that's allowed in any kind of a piece that we write is determined by the person who is distributing our material. A good example of this would be the Liberty Beacon. The Liberty Beacon produces, they distribute practically everything we write. In addition to other distributors, they're one of our distributors. Now, the Liberty Beacon has taken notice of Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and everybody else's response to hate speech, which is to ban it altogether. The problem that we're going to run into here is going to be the fact that some people will not be able to discriminate between hate speech and non-hate speech. And of course, there will be some people who think that one thing is hate speech based on their own principles, while the something else that somebody else thinks is hate speech, they'll think it's perfectly fine because the two sets of principles will be at work defining what is and is not hate speech. And at the end of the day, they're not going to agree on that. So that's one principle that's at work, and that is, should anybody have the right to tell a writer or a speaker what it is that they can use to construct their speech out? The second issue is our First Amendment right. That's a second issue altogether, and I feel more of a sense of alacrity here than I do with the first issue. The first issue is something that's always been there. It's always been there. But Facebook has always been able to put people in Facebook jail for doing stuff that Facebook thought was over the edge. I don't think they used it enough. I don't think that they were diligent enough in searching for people who were behaving in a menacing way on Facebook. But when you start talking about this from the standpoint of our First Amendment rights, that's a whole different thing altogether. Because up until now, it's not the federal government who's saying what can and cannot be done on social media. But how long can it be before some Nimrod in Congress decides to put forth a bill codifying Facebook and Instagram's notions, and YouTube and social media's notions about speech? How long can it be before we have an internet hate speech bill that sets up restrictions on what can and cannot be said on the internet? Now, some people may think this is a good idea, but folks, it's not. To codify somebody else's ideas about what is okay for us to say and not say
three things that are addressed. It says freedom of speech, religion, and the press. In other words, the expression of your ideas, be they spiritual, printed, or coming out of your mouth. It does not say only when you stand behind this fence, only when you're in your living room. It does not address if you are published in some way, which is what Facebook truly is, and they do not want to admit it. They, on the one hand, they say, we are an open platform and have no prejudices for the expression of ideas, and on the other hand, they have invented Facebook jail. Your thoughts?
Well, I think what you've done is you've opened up yet another argument, and that is whether or not social media is indeed the true battleground of free speech. Let's face it, when we're out there talking to one another at Walmart, or even raising our voices so that other people can hear us, our voices have a very limited reach. Only on the internet does the average person like you or I have the ability to reach really an unlimited number of people. But in most cases, say 9 to 45 people, which is a lot for the average person. Those 9 to 45 people can share or retweet or, in some other way keep that message moving down the line. And so it strikes me that before we start allowing the inventors and the purveyors of this service called internet speech, it occurs to me that before we start allowing them to make large decisions in the way that it's used or not used, then we ought to decide ourselves whether or not that's free speech under the First Amendment. It may not be funded by government, but in a way it is. Isn't all internet funded by government some way or another?
It was invented by governments as a means of military communication originally. The thing is, there's a saying, there is nothing new under the sun. Okay? From Martin Luther's 95 Theses to Thomas Paine's Common Sense to Facebook, it's all the same. It's the public expression of ideas. And Martin Luther was attacked, okay? Thomas Paine, naturally, he was a patriot in the Revolutionary War. He was attacked. Anthony Thomas is attacked simply because he belongs to a group of people who believe that they're being unduly seized upon by organizations trying to change their thought patterns.
Well, I cannot for the life of me understand why okay, let's go back to federal. The government taxes things you buy on the internet, does it not?
Yes, it does, and that was a big leap too. For a long time, the internet had no taxes on it, and insidiously the government got in there, and now you pay taxes for stuff you buy, things like that.
That makes it part of interstate commerce.
Exactly.
And anything operating under the interstate commerce laws has to obey the Constitution.
Exactly. They were nailing
it. So I think we just stumbled over the fact that they cannot do it. Now the question is, how do you make them stop doing what they can't do?
Well, it's like Anthony pointing out on his Facebook page this week, consistently, and on YouTube. He did a 3-hour documentary, and his work is good. I agree with him or not, his visual work is very good. It's Netflix quality. And for the life of the man, he could not get YouTube to accept it. He had to put it up on a separate platform under a hidden name, and he sent me the link, and the butcher shop distributed him last night. Okay? But Facebook, he's been pointing out, they are censoring him to the nines. Anything he says. But they do not censor people who come onto his page, his platform, on Facebook, and call him all manner of bad names and make all manner of threats. Okay? So like you said, the regulation is being applied unevenly. The regulation should be you cannot threaten someone their life. You know what I mean? You can't say something that I'm going to come to your house and strike you about the head and shoulders tomorrow. That is wrong. Okay? But as far as a person expressing a political stance, and my attack, and you know this, my attack has always been humor. Always, like even today. And I'm going to leave it in there because it's not hate speech. I said that I am a disciple of Christopher Hitchens. I don't articulate that because when I use that, like I am right now, I find myself talking over the heads of the majority party in Congress. I made a humorous jab at the intellect of the Democratic Party, but I didn't threaten them. If you want to best me, then you be more articulate than I am. You be Bill Maher, okay? Not Nancy Pelosi. You be Bill Maher, like the young lady on Clinical Reality, Trez Lamas-Cecile. Like I said last night on the show last night, she handed me my face. And instead of getting mad and bringing up all these irrelevant arguments, I just said, touche. And she and I became friends. Go ahead.
Sorry. You know how it is down here with the weather like it is.
Oh, God, it hit me last night, too. Yeah.
Well, my lungs are just whinging now. So, all right. You have a climate that clearly puts social media squarely in the middle of what is free speech. You know, that's like saying that a newspaper that newspapers could censor. Well, I guess newspapers always did censor what you wrote and didn't write.
It's called the senior editor. But the government cannot censor what the senior editor decides is all fair game. The Killeen Daily Flabbergasted won't print a grocery list we write because they are staunch liberal and they do not like us.
Well, the Temple Daily Telegram won't print anything we write because they're totally indifferent to anything except for what the editor says to write about. And that person wakes up once a day and for about 20 minutes and comes up with the entire papers. Well, we can't sell papers here, but nobody's interested in what's in them. So what's happening is we're going to have a social media. We're going to have a social media senior editor. Is it going to be the same senior editor for every branch of social media? Will one branch of social media allow certain kinds of phraseology or vocabulary while another one won't?
Well,
I mean, it's so disorganized to me. Is there going to be any government oversight? There really can't be, can there?
it depends on the platform you're on. For instance, we're two-stepping around Facebook right now, and I know it. Okay, Ralph is a very good editor, and he's very smart at dodging these golf balls. Okay, but when I first went on the Nextdoor platform here locally, we included them in our distribution network, and as usual, before a week was over, we had eclipsed the entire website, and the ex-mayor here said if I kept it up, he was going to withdraw from the platform. So I actually saw over what he said, and I thought, wait a minute, I don't want to do that, but I do want people to see what I'm doing. So what we started doing was Saturday morning chapter of a book, and I'm working right now through Cigar Box. Okay, on that very article with the trib is a link to all the articles we have written that week. So it's all in one little tiny link on Saturday morning about 8 o'clock where the people in the neighborhood, now the town, get up and they say, oh, yeah, there's another chapter of Cigar Box. So the ladies in the neighborhood formed a book club. They formed a book club, and they're all following it. And, as you know, on the trip, people follow the Stones Woman and stuff that you write. But you can't tell what the public is going to like until you say it. I assume in the Killeen, Texas, a military town in a upper high-end neighborhood full of military retirees, they would be very conservative, very pro-administration and all that. And they weren't. But they were pro-history. Cigar Box gives a wide-span fictional view of old-time Texas in the 1998, back then. And they love it, especially some of the ladies who contacted me, and they say, it is so real. Yes, it is real. June Montgomery was a real girl. She really died. She really lived in this house that I'm in. We crafted a story around her life. Fat Eddie's Catfish Emporium is the Hallmark Cafe, and they went for it. But if I were to run that in Detroit, well, I don't know, Kent and some other people up there in New Jersey and New York, they like it because it's Texan and everybody likes, cowboys. But you never can tell.
Yeah, the last picture show.
That's the last, absolutely. But there is language in Cigar Box because the real June Montgomery, April Cass, had language, and the storyline of the teenage girl who marries rich and everything, what she did in order to get into that neighborhood and how she did it and everything is very, 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 I guess it's going to be earthy. You met April, but she was only about 8 years old when you met her.
Right.
Go ahead.
A beautiful little girl.
She certainly was.
Just to recap, for the purposes of what you're recording, Billy, the three issues that we're focused on here are these, and that is, does social media represent an area of free speech that the people who run it should have such control over that they can limit the speech of the people that are on it? I think that's a legitimate question.
I think that is the main question being asked here. Indeed, this very podcast, if it's reviewed articulately by the powers that be in the social media, they could take the entire podcast and say, well, since they're disagreeing with our management of our platform, we consider that to be hate speech because they hate what we're doing, and we're gone.
Well, that's definitely what you just said. Is one way of looking at it, but as you well know, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is this: who owns the empty air between my lips and your ear? Who owns that air? To whom does that air belong? And who gets to censor what sound waves get to penetrate it and what sound waves don't? And social media is nothing but empty air between my lips and somebody else's ear. That's what social media is.
I think you're right. I think you're right. We're going to have to, and folks, before you think that we're throwing in the towel, the butcher shop is composed of, I don't know how many members we got now, Tim, but we got them all over the world that contribute to what we do. And we have some people who have a very high level of intelligence. Peter, Daniel, I know you and Chappie, opposite ends of the political spectrum, but Chappie's got a master's degree. You have
Chappie's a smart guy.
He's
a devoted opponent. I like arguing with Chappie.
You got a double master's and a doctorate, and now me, I've got a high school education from Killeen, Texas, which is about as ignorant as you can be, and they still let you drive a car. But I went to the School of Hard Knocks in Nashville, and I learned to sing, so that's where I come from. But there's a lot of us, and we're not going to back down. We're going to challenge this, and we're going to make people at Facebook and Twitter and like that. We will conform to anything they say, but we will make them listen. Your thoughts, Tim?
My thoughts are that this is great for us. I mean, I think it's bad for everybody else, but it's definitely great for us because you and I had to invent customized writing skills. The opposition to what we were doing, number one, having a liberal and a conservative together on the same show, which was a mess. Nobody really knows that. But folks, that Billy and I had to walk uphill carrying big rocks on our shoulders every day for a long time just to get us to the point where we have this show, where we're able to get together a liberal and a conservative and have a conversation. That took some doing. So in the doing of it, we had to invite other people in. And some of them were good and some of them were no good and some of them were trolls. But we finally worked ourselves to the point where we've got a team of about 8 really good writers. And what we're going to do is we're going to utilize our ability to write in a customizable way to get around what Facebook is doing and say what we want to hear, what we want to say, and what other people want to hear. And there'll be other writers who are just bogged down in the process because they didn't have to go through what we had to go through.
See, that's what happened. Like with Daniel Shannon, we raised the bar at the Trib. When I first started there, all by my lonesome, the articles were not interesting. I'll be honest with you, they were not interesting. And we began to push the envelope and raise the bar to where it takes a Frank Kennedy, it takes a Daniel Shannon, major writer, it takes a Robert Beatty to knock us off the front page, even temporarily. And I love that because now I rarely used to read any other articles at the Trib because they were boring. Now, when I see the word Daniel Shannon, I'll read that man's article because he'll nail it. He will nail it.
Oh, I could have gone all week without hearing that guy's name. I'm not kidding you. When I want a good dose of humility, which is not really what I was looking for today, but I think about Daniel Shannon because that guy is they don't make him like him anymore. When he's gone, they're not going to make another one like him.
No, he's like my inspiration was a man called Dick West. You can't find a reference to that man anywhere. But in the Killeen Daily Flabbergasted, every day on the editorial page, he might have been a local guy, I don't know. He would do about a 200-word article, and his style is the style that I adopted when I was a junior in high school. And I never lost that vision of how that man would articulate. He would tell stories like Snivy, the prison guard, who never married and lived with his brother and his sister-in-law and 2 children, and he was a prison guard at Sing Sing, and there was a prisoner who was constantly berating him on death row. I'm going to break out of here, and I'm going to kill your niece and nephew, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And Snivy just took it. Big old giant man just took it. Well, the prisoner broke out, got across the river, and actually killed the guard on the way out, and he recaptured him. Rather than retrying him for the new murder, his execution was planned for the next morning anyway. They just proceeded, and Snivy was chosen to deliver his last meal. He set it down in front of him, and when the man went over to sit and eat his meal, Snivy hit him right between the eyes, knocked him back against the wall, and politely sat down and ate the meal. They drugged that prisoner to the electric chair screaming, "Snivy ate my last meal."
Yeah, I remember that. I remember Dick West, too. He and a guy named Peter Arena. You remember Peter Arena?
Yes, Peter Arena ran for the city council every time around so he could advertise his hamburgers.
I think he was after Bob Ketchum. Well, that is plus, myself, I detected a great deal of conviction in his voice when he says that he believed that it was every citizen's civic duty to run for office if they were capable of doing the job. He was one of those people who really believed that public service was, public service.
Mm-hmm. He had 6 hamburgers for $1, and my dad always said his mouth didn't fit his face. I don't know what he meant by that.
He was always running sports in line.
But we ate his hamburgers. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up at the end of 30 minutes and everything because we are going to publish this morning on the Trib, and I'm going to send it to Ralph and everybody else because these issues need to be addressed, and we purposely kept this very clean, very wholesome and everything, because the butcher shop is not going to back down on freedom of speech. Not even liberals' freedom of speech, okay? That little lady that handed me my face last week, it made a point. It made 2 points. Number one, I was wrong. And number two, I was gentleman enough to concede to the young lady, good show. I know you're a liberal. I know all these things about you, but you made me think, and I read up on that. It also made me, and this is going to break my jaw, re-examine Hillary Clinton. Because if she was lied about like that, what else have they lied about? Your concluding thoughts, Ted.
Man, I don't want to end this thing saying something even partially exculpatory about Hillary Clinton. So I'm just going to say that you're right. You're right. We all deserve better than to just be railroaded the way that people are being railroaded on social media. I think that what they need to do is start do it the way Europe does it, and that is, if you say something in there that is patently untrue, they'll give you a warning, and if you ignore that warning and do it again, then they'll toss you off the internet permanently. They just give you a permanent ban.
Well, we go back to, in conclusion, the famous Alex case. I'm not even going to say the man's last name. It might be a 4-letter word. I don't know. But he's got a big mouth, and I figure at least half of what he says is just designed to get attention and sell more of his vitamins and stuff, okay?
Right.
But even the highly liberal students at the University of Texas rallied to his cause. When he got knocked off, even they said, okay, this is a foul. This is a foul. Because we know he's just in it for the buck, but aren't we all? And like I said in the article today, the last word in my article was when speech is so restricted, nothing gets said. When nothing gets said, nothing gets done. And when even the border problem will not be solved when even the word wall becomes a 4-letter word.
Well, that's so very true. And one of those places where truth and kitschiness wind up in the same intersection. I don't know how you do it. It's one of your skills. So yeah, let's focus on this area for a little while.
I think it's
a big story. It's a big story. It's one of the biggest stories that's out there because it's going to influence how it is that we're allowed to talk to each other on social media, and that is going to spread itself out into the culture. You can just count on it, bank on it.
I think so too. It's something that we're going to have to address. It's just something. I mean, I think we astounded, accosted this subject here during this podcast, and this is the first time that we didn't free rein people. Usually we just jabber and let the humor come out. But after Ralph's letter this morning, Ted and I had a long discussion before we made this podcast that we're going to have to address this, and we're going to have to address it as the educated people that we truly are, which completely blows the image of the butcher shop, So now we expose we expose ourselves as being literate, God forbid, So with that having been said, we're going to cut this off at the 30-minute mark and make it marketable and everything. And I am going to publish this on the Trib, and the people out there will be able to listen to it. Ted, you got anything else to say?
No, in 15 minutes I got to be over at Justin's house because he's going to be calling from the jail.
All right.
Which is another story we're working on.
All right.
So he's going to be calling over there, and I want to be there for that phone call.
Yeah, Pam asked me last night, might want to put she might put some money on his books, man. Okay, let's let it go. See you later.
Get your phone out of my face.